Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Atari A to Z, a series of short playthroughs of Atari 8-bit games, some which I grew up with and some which are new to me. Today is one of the former. Today we're taking a look at the Great American Cross Country Road Race, which was a 1985 release from Activision, developed by Alex DeMeo. It was released first on Atari 8-bit and then ported to Apple II and Commodore 64, and it's often seen as a follow-up or adaptation of Activision's Enduro for Atari 2600, but in fact there's no real direct connections between the two of them, aside from the publisher of course. The game was inspired by the Great Gumball Rally, which developer Alex DeMeo was a big fan of, and it was noteworthy for incorporating a lot more in the way of realistic elements than we typically see in racing games of the period. So we had things like fuel gauges, road conditions, gear changes, weather conditions, cop chases, all sorts of things. So this was a really interesting and unusual game for the time because it had a lot more depth than we typically seen in racing games from the period. So it's one that's actually stood up quite well in a lot of ways. So let's go take a look. Let's go play the Great American Cross Country Road Race. Okay, here we are with the Great American Cross Country Road Race from Activision, with this title screen inspired by Master of the Lamps, which is an earlier Activision game I should say, that used a very similar effect. So here we are, designed by Alex DeMeo, who we've seen, and yes, we can get straight into the game by pressing Select to load. So from here, you can see here's a leaderboard for the various different routes you can take through the game, because there's several different courses you can go. You can actually save your progress onto cassette or disc in this as well, and so when you start the game up, you can then load in your leaderboards and sort of have a continuous competition cycle against yourself or against other people or all sorts of things. I'm going to say no for now. Los Angeles to New York. Let's see what else is available. We've got Seattle to Miami. We've got San Francisco to Washington. US tour. And that's everything. So let's try San Francisco to Washington. So we'll say yes. You then press start to start your engine. And here we are. So you can see that we're in San Francisco at the moment, over on the west coast. That's the flashing circle. And the arrow is where we want to go next. So you can push the joystick in different directions to choose different routes you might want to take. So you can go to any of the adjacent cities basically. So we can go to Los Angeles, we can go to Salt Lake City, or we can go to Seattle from here. And our destination is Washington over on the east coast, as you can see. So probably the quickest route for us at the moment is going to be going via Salt Lake City. And you'll see from the scrolling message that normal road conditions are ahead, so we should be alright. So, let's just begin. So in this game, rather unusually, you press the fire button to accelerate. And then you push up and down on the joystick to change gears. And you then steer as you would expect. And as you can see, this is very much a vanishing point racer, where steering is just a case of moving left and right to avoid things and to sort of slide left and right across the road. And when you're on a corner, you're gradually pushed towards the outside of the corner, so you need to steer to counterbalance that. So there's quite a lot to think about while you're playing this. You've seen already we've had a radar warning, which means that the police have noticed you speeding. And there's two things you can do in that situation. One, you can slow down and get pulled over, which costs you precious time. Or two, you can accelerate up to your car's maximum speed of 240 miles per hour. And if you can maintain that for a little while without crashing, then you will outrun the police. So normally you want to take the latter option, obviously, but you've got to be very careful not to smash into any of the other cars on the road, as you can see, because they're not all that bothered about lane discipline. You also need to keep an eye on your fuel gauge in the lower left corner. You can see that every so often we get a message telling us that there's gas on the left or the right. And so when your fuel starts to get a bit low, you'll want to think about slowing down. And stopping. Because running out of fuel is bad. Unfortunately, it's often quite difficult to judge where the fuel is. So you've got to be really careful to pull over in time and not smash into the pump. Because if you smash into the pump, that happens, and it's really annoying because it pushes you past the pump. And you'll then inevitably run out of fuel. And cause yourself terrible problems. See, we're out of fuel now, so our engine's gone off. See, you can coast along for a little while like that. But if you hit something, or if you come to a stop, then you have to push your car by hammering the fire button. So there is some gas coming up on the right. So all we need to do is make sure that we stop for it. Not yet, so I guess it must be past this one. There it is. Oh, we've done it again. See, this is the problem. This is the problem. You got to stop right next to it, but you got to do it without crashing. Which is a little troublesome, as you can see. Particularly once you start running out of time. So I don't think we're going to make this first stage. But we'll have another go in a moment, don't you worry. Right, there's some fuel coming up on the left. Let's see if we can't figure out exactly how you're supposed to do this. No, out of time. Right, I've got to figure it out. Disqualified. Time has run out. Press any key to race again. Sure, why not? Alright, we'll try that again. No, yes. And off we go. I've got to figure this out, because this is the one element of this game that I've always been terrible at for some reason. Right, let's try it now. We've got plenty of fuel at the moment, so let's just practice parking. Right, there's the pump. So pull over slightly. Just ease in there without crashing into it. There we are. Right, so you don't need to be too close to it. I think that's usually my problem, is I try and get too close to it. And that's what causes me to crash into it. Police! I used to have real difficulty with this game as a kid because I didn't understand what gears were. And so what I'd end up doing is I'd end up changing straight into the highest gear possible, accelerating really slowly, and then wondering why I was completely incapable of beating the timer. I remember far more vividly than I would like an occasion where I was playing this game, and I actually burst into tears to my dad because, I quote, "The timer cheats in this game." My dad quite rightly recommended it. That was probably a good cue to go and play something else for a bit. Don't need to be too close, just need to pull over and stop when the sprite is at its largest. Like that. There we go. All these years I've been making it much more difficult than it needed to be. So I've got a long way to go though. And not a lot of time. Those of you familiar with Enduro will doubtless see the connections here. What with the sort of endless road and the endless traffic coming your direction. The difference is that you're not sort of counting how many cars you're overtaking in this one. It's all about actually going the distance rather than overtaking a certain number of cars in a set time limit. So you see here we've reached the city limits, and the previous scenery is disappearing over the horizon to reveal Salt Lake City in the distance. Oh no! Also getting a bit low on time, but I'm careful, we should be able to make it. There we go. Welcome to Salt Lake City. Right, we then choose our next route. You are now in the 6th place behind Jumpstart John. Okay, so our next route is... we can go back to Las Vegas, but no point in doing that. We can go to Seattle, but no point in doing that. The only real option is to go to... excuse me, go to Denver. But it's snowy, so we're going to have to be careful here. So we've got 5 minutes 30, not real time, to drive 505 miles. Not real miles. So, let's go. I need to stop for some fuel at some point on here. So the snow, as you might expect, affects your handling somewhat. In this case, it sort of makes it a bit stiffer. Right, next thing I need to master with the fuel is slowing down a bit later. So the pump doesn't actually appear until the words gas on right or gas on left disappear. So once that disappears, you know the next scenery item at the side of the road is going to be the pump. So you need to try and time things that way if at all. Anyway, yes, as I was saying, the snow affects your handling slightly. So your movement isn't quite as responsive on the snow, which makes it more difficult to avoid things. The corners themselves are never a real problem, because they don't get any tighter than this. But obviously, to make sure you avoid traffic, you need a bit of responsiveness. This is still actually quite an impressive game from a sort of technical and design perspective. Just the way it's taking into account things like the time of day. You can see the sun setting in the background now. You can see the clouds moving in the distance. Oh dear, this isn't going well. Always like the way that the scenery disappeared over the horizon and the new city appeared, as if you were sort of cresting a hill coming into the new town. City limits! Oh god! So many crashes. Not worrying about fuel for now, just want to get there. No! Come on, little car, you can do this. You have got this, come on. Hooray! Ski! That's what you do in Denver. Right, onwards to St. Louis next, or possibly... Nope, just to St. Louis, or Albuquerque. Not much point going that way, no point going to Billings. May as well go this. Normal road conditions ahead, but it is going to be night time, so we're going to have to be very careful. Got nearly 9 minutes to go, 865 miles here. So we'll see... Well, we'll see how things go. Gonna need some fuel. Pretty sharpish. There we go. Right, the nighttime effect you'll see is very similar to the one in Enduro, which is another reason why this gets compared to it quite often. The opposing cars also go slightly faster as well, which is actually quite helpful for you, because that means if you set your speed slightly higher than them, which is generally the best way to handle the races, so you don't have them coming at you too rapidly. Uh-oh. Crashed right into the policeman. So you see, that just wastes a bunch of time while you sit there and he yells at you. So like I say, the other car's going a bit faster than normal is actually helpful for you, because it means you can go faster without them coming at you too rapidly to avoid. As that means, assuming you don't get caught by the police like I just did, you'll get to your destination quicker, which is nice. See, I'm going 192 miles an hour, and the traffic is just sort of gently coming towards us. Very nicely indeed. So the moral of the story is, drive at night. Yeah, well ahead of schedule at the minute. Getting a little bit low on fuel. Maybe we'll stop at the next pump if there is one. There we go. I've got the hang of that now. That's a nice feeling. I've struggled with that part of this game for years. See, day's starting to break now. The cars have come back into colour. So it behooves you to maybe slow down a little bit. It's alright, we are well ahead of schedule though. Hooray! Alright, onwards from St. Louis to Cincinnati. You are now in 7th place behind Move Over Mary. So we're not doing great time-wise. But we're okay. Limited visibility as well, so we've got a bit of fog here. Not sure what effect that has on the other drivers, but let's see how things go. Yeah, so you have much less time to respond to traffic in the fog. And it also seems to be traffic seems to be a little bit denser as well than it is at night time in particular. It's okay, we're at the city limits already. So not long till this nightmare is over. Could use some fuel though. Especially while we've got plenty of time. If there is a pump before we reach the city, it might be worth taking, although I think we're going to reach it before we... Lovely stuff. Cincinnati to New York next. Normal road conditions ahead. You are now in 10th place. Oh, we're getting further and further back with each each passing stage, aren't we? Never mind. Just making it to the end in this is an achievement in itself. Ow, bollocks. Leave me alone! Where's the fire? No, no! Missed it. Bollocks. Now we're in trouble. Alright, just take it easy. There's got to be a... Yeah, one coming up on the right. Push. Push it. Push it real good. Push it. Don't. Don't go past it. Don't you dare go past it. There we go. Alright, still plenty of time. It's all good. Everything's fine. Oh my god, traffic. So much traffic. Let's stick at this speed for now. A mere 148 miles an hour cruising speed. So many cars! So many cars. Oop. Still quite a ways to go as well. Uh-oh. The reason I continued playing this game as a child, even though it made me cry on more than one occasion, is because of a reason I've talked about quite a few times on this series before. As a child, I was fascinated with the idea of driving. Not like motorsports or anything, just like driving in general. And so anytime I had the opportunity to experience something that had sort of even a passing resemblance to real driving, I would take it. So in the case of this game, I really, really loved the fact that you had sort of quite an authentic looking instrument panel down at the bottom, complete with the analog gauges. And even though I didn't understand gear shifting, I still enjoyed seeing the speedo going up and the fuel gauge and the way the mile counter ticked down like a real... well, I mean, real mile gauges tick up, don't they? But I really like the way this moved, like a tape counter. That's still an effect I really like, actually. Sort of whether it's physically on pinball machines or just on video games like this one. It's New York! Right, well, last station, New York to Washington. You are now in 10th place. Behind Jet Engine Gym. 238 miles to go, 5 minutes 32 in which to do that. I'd say this should be a shoo-in for 10th place. And get some fuel at the first opportunity, though. Which is coming up shortly. There you are. Fill her up! And here we go, on the last leg of our race. Out of my way, commuters. Oops. Uh-oh. This is not how I wanted to finish my race. But it's okay. Because I escaped the cop. I may have crashed immediately afterwards, but I escaped the cop. Here is Washington. Whoops. There's the back end of someone's car. Hooray! We've done it! We've done it, I tell you. Right. Race completed. Congratulations. And we are 10th place behind Jet Engine Gym. Type in name and date. How do we type in the date? Do we have to go all the way over here? We do, yes. All right. I can't actually remember what date it is today. October the 2nd, something like that. Safety tape. No, because I don't have the means of doing that right now. Anyway, that is just one of the races in the Great American Cross Country Road Race by Activision for Atari 8-bit. Still a really fun game, that, actually. Takes a little bit of adjusting to, because it's got so many elements that aren't quite like other racing games, even now. But it's a really fun game. I would love to see some sort of reimagining of this at some point. I suppose stuff like Outrun and that kind of thing, and sort of modern recreations of Outrun and things, do something similar to this. But there's never been something that sort of specifically attempts to recreate the feeling of driving across the entire USA in quite the same form as this. I guess the closest thing is probably something like Ubisoft's The Crew, but even that's a different kind of thing anyway. Anyway, let's leave that there for today. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.